Bill Long is out as offensive coordinator for Boston College, and Bill O'Brien has a chance to fix the offense.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I have been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you're looking for Boston College news, analysis, and details on your Eagles, you are in the right place. Locked On Boston College is a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to talk today about a last-minute transfer addition that we heard about from Bill O'Brien in his press conference. We'll look at some of O'Brien's comments about what some of those mean. Will Long is out, and who could replace him? All of this on a packed show. I'm so glad you're joining me. If you're here today in the YouTube comment section, I appreciate each and every one of you as well. So I have to say, on Tuesday, I was surprised that Boston College offensive coordinator Will Long was reported by Matt Zenitz to be leaving Boston College. Now, the press release, the comments that Matt Zenitz had in his tweet was kind of vague. It was like he was leaving to grab a NFL job, and it was like, it could be with the Bears and a whole bunch of other things. Now, at first I was a little skeptical when I saw this, because I was like, in terms of like, is this just like him covering, his butt that he's leaving? Or, is this something else? But when Bill O'Brien held his press conference and asked about it, they said, Bill said that he's going to the Bears, which makes sense. Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Bears, was teammates with Long at UNC. So this is, it makes sense, right? I wonder if this was a encouraged move, but I think it's a good move for Boston College regardless. I thought at the end of last season that we were going to get, a total nuking of the coaching staff. You'd have a few guys that would remain, but the heads of each group would probably get fired in terms of Tim Lewis and Will Long. Lewis got fired pretty early, but Long, he kind of stuck around. And so I was saying to myself, okay, this is Bill O'Brien's buddy. He came with him from the Patriots. He came from Alabama, the Texans. He's been at a bunch of different stops. I just assumed he was going to get a pass, and this was going to continue. And it makes me, what analogy this makes me think of? It makes me think of The Sopranos. If you're a big Sopranos fan, when Jackie Jr. shoots up the poker game, and Ralphie is saying like, oh, I can't decide what I want to do. I'm going to give him a pass. And that's what I'm thinking here. Like, they're giving him a pass, right? Even though you knew what you needed to do, which is he should be fired, right? You look at BC's offense last year. They were 85th in the country in scoring. They were 127th, I think it was, in rushing yards, 15th in the country in passing yards, which honestly surprised me. I knew they were good for a while, but they really continued to be pretty good. So the offense, it didn't really click. You had moments where it looked really smooth with any of your backs, whether it was Castellanos, Grayson James, Dylan Larnigan, like all three of those guys had their moments. But there were also moments where things got predictable, where things got, like it just isn't working. And we joke about it here on Locked On BC, the mesh rail, right? That was a play that he called over and over and over and over again. And that kind of epitomized, I think, the Will Long years. You didn't see a ton of development in this offense. And honestly, you go back and listen to some of the things that Bill O'Brien said in some of his press conferences. A lot of it was was hard on the offensive play calling, which is lying. So this was not something that should have been a surprise. It's just the timing of it is just really weird. Right? You just assumed if this was a Bill O'Brien wanting to move on, it does not behoove anybody to do this right, like when right, because any college coach that he could have got that would have been decent is probably gone by now. They've all got hired. Like Mitch Wolf, credit to Mitch, gave me a list at the end of the season. He's crazy with this stuff of every positional coach and like who would be options if they got fired right away. And I went through it today because obviously with Long leaving, I was like, oh, who's going to be gone? Who could be some options? And I was like, okay, this guy got hired, like Tim Beck got hired by Coastal Carolina. I mean, he was at Coastal Carolina, got hired by USF. This guy got hired here. Phil Troutwayne was on. Like he got hired by Florida. It doesn't make a lot of sense if this was like Bill O'Brien waiting to do this. It just seems to me when you put together a staff of NFL coaches who've done a lot of NFL work, and I know Long did stuff at Alabama too. When you get that taste of NFL life versus college life, you're going to go to NFL life anytime you can. Hafley did it. Tem Lokabu did it. We're seeing it with a bunch of different head coaches that just decide college life is just too much because the college schedule is a grind. It is nonstop. NFL, you get a little bit of time to breathe. So if things are kind of like, he probably could read the tea leaves a little bit and know that like, okay, there's a chance that next year things are going to, if things don't go well, I could be out of a job. Bill could be out of a job. Who knows who could be out of a job? I could go to the Bears who just made the playoffs and I will have more job security and I can take that next bump. So I think that's almost probably where my brain goes to why Long did it now, because it seems like if you look at the hierarchy of where things are going, you would say that this is taking a step back. But remember, Tem Lokabu, when he left, he became a linebackers coach. He did basically the same thing. He went from college coordinator down to linebackers coach. And hey, he's probably going to be, there's a good chance he could be Jeff Hafley's new defensive coordinator. So these types of moves make sense. And this makes all the sense in the world for BC because I think, the system was dreary. It was boring football. It was in 2 years, it really never clicked consistently. Like it had its moments, but it never really was consistent. And now you're bringing in Mason Mackenzie, Grayson Wilson, these mobile quarterbacks. You need an offensive coordinator that can work with them. You need an offensive coordinator that is going to do more than just make them sit in the pocket and make reads. That's partially on Bill O'Brien, but if he understands, and Bill's a smart guy, right? If he understands that he's going to adjust his offense, maybe he knows too that he now needs an offensive coordinator that's going to work well with mobile quarterbacks, with guys that improvise, guys that go off script, because you cannot do, if they go with what we had with Long the last 2 years with Mason Mackenzie or Grayson Wilson, that's a recipe for disaster. And I don't think they're going to. You need to change this. And this is honestly a bit of a relief because you now have the opportunity to really hit the hard reboot. This really now, you look at this roster and this staff, they hit that reset button harder than I ever thought Boston College could. You lost since last year your defensive coordinator, your offensive coordinator, your offensive line coach, your wide receivers coach, your running backs coach. You lost 31 players in the transfer portal. You brought in 30. You have 49 new players out of 105. This is about as hard of a reboot as you will ever see at Boston College, and this completes that. They could change more. Like you could see maybe like Matt Turn get picked off by like Jeff Hafley. Maybe he needs, he knows him. Maybe he wants him as special teams coach. But if this is it, this gives Bill O'Brien a clean slate to really change what happened last year and hopefully not have it happen again. In a moment, what does he need to get for an offensive coordinator? And who are names that we're going to be throwing around? I'll get into all of that and more in just a moment. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all the customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. Ride with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup. Take a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset coming, or build a parlay around the players and moments you think will win the game. I love doing this with Patriots games. Adding a little spice to your game always is a lot of fun. And with the game against the Broncos, you're facing Jarrett Stidham. Get some of those defensive prop bets in there, turn those into a nice parlay, and boom, you're good to go. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every single day. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here. I want to shout out to all my everydayers and all of you in my everydayers club. I appreciate each and every one of you who have joined. Now, I'm going to get into some candidates in a moment, but for my everyday all access tier, I've already put in who I think will be the next offensive coordinator, and it's up on the stream. If you're an all access member, you know who I'm about to talk about. I'm going to have a whole bunch of other candidates that I'm going to talk about here too. But that's the fun part about the all access tier. I do special episodes. I did a 10-minute episode on this. I've done 10-minute episodes on recruiting. I do all sorts of good stuff. It's a really great way, if you're a diehard Locked On BC fan, to get even more content from us and support the podcast. So if you have not done so already, I hope you join us. It's all the details are right there, lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. Click on Boston College and sign yourself up today. Now, with Will Lawing gone, the names are going to start to drip out of who should be the next candidate, next offensive coordinator. And I heard folks already complaining about Chip Kelly. And honestly, I didn't want Chip Kelly. I mean, maybe you want Chip Kelly here, but I don't think he would have been the best fit. But who would be? Who could be a name that BC could hire? Well, first of all, people are going to look internally. They're going to look at guys on the staff, right? The first name you're going to bring up is Jon DiBiaso, the quarterback's coach. Folks really think high of him. He's a younger coach. He has done some really good job recruiting at different points. A local guy. Obviously, his dad's at CM. He's a legend locally. When you look at Jon DiBiaso, though, I think the big key here that really puts him kind of behind the eight ball is the philosophy that Bill O'Brien just took with his defensive coordinator, Roof. If you listen to why he hired Ted Roof, he said it multiple times. He likes him because he's been around a long time. He's experienced. DiBiaso would basically be like doing Lawing all over again. Like, young guy who just it's not experienced. It doesn't mesh to me with what Bill O'Brien wants to do. Second name that you may hear about is on the staff right now is Rob Chudzinski. Rob Chudzinski was an offensive coordinator for BC under Jeff Hafley. He worked with Tommy Castellanos. His son Kalen's on the roster. He worked with the Browns as a head coach and with the Indianapolis Colts. Long history, kind of matches with what you could be looking for. He could be a name that you could be looking at offensive coordinator as well. Now, there are other names too, and I think they're worth bringing up. There was a New York Giants offensive coordinator that was hired earlier, and I'm trying to find his name because I just lost it. Let's see. I'm getting it right now. I promise you. Brian Daboll's offensive coordinator. Well, there was an offensive coordinator for the New York Giants. I lost his name. I apologize. I cannot find it. So he would be one. And I think, when you're looking at other names that could be coming up, you really the connection tree, I think, is obviously super important with him, but there's other people that you may want to, look at and say, like Joe Moorhead at Akron. That's that would be a slam dunk. Or Nick Charlton of the Cleveland Browns. This was the former offensive coordinator of the UConn Huskies, and I think he was the head coach at Maine at one point. He would be a name I would watch for. And I another name I would love for them to look at is the head coach the quarterback's coach at Harvard, or offensive coordinator at Harvard, Mickey Fine. I mean, their offense, you saw what they did with Jaden Craig. He would be a slam dunk as well. So those are just some names that are popping up. Will BC be able to get up and coming hot young offensive coordinator? I think that's going to be tough because A, many of those have already been hired, and B, you just went 2-10. C, you're Boston College. Money is always kind of tight. A combination of all that make it tough, but you never know. You never know, because honestly, Mike Hart surprised me with BC. Like I never thought he would be in BC's ballpark, and they go out there and hire him. Kurt Anderson was a pretty good hire, and there could be a name that pops out that you're just like, oh, I didn't realize he knew Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel knows Bill O'Brien. I think there always could be a surprise there as well. Now, if you want to know who I picked to be the offensive coordinator, become part of our Everyday Club, I can tell you more about that. Now, Bill O'Brien held his introductory press conference on Tuesday for the upcoming class of transfers and mid-year enrollees. There's 9 mid-year enrollees, and I think there was 30 transfers that are coming in. He talked about how crazy fast this entire process was for him. He basically had 45 players come in. So if you want to get a hit rate of what Bill O'Brien was able to get in, he only missed on like 14, and I could probably think of a few. I know a few probably were like quarterbacks and things like that. But you brought these guys in. You have basically 24 hours to woo them. All the players that you have left on your roster are gone. Most of them are gone. So he had to call back local guys. So thank you to, I'm sure, Max Tucker and some of the Micah Amedi and things like that are probably living close that could come and say, hey, Boston College is a great school, you should come here. He gets them in here. They quickly do, and then he's going to basically get them here and enrolled. And it sounds like, if he looked tired, I don't blame him, because the last 2 weeks must have been breakneck speed for the staff, because there is no late transfer portal window. This is it. You guys get that, right? After the spring ball, there is nothing for the portal anymore. They got rid of that. Now, if I were a betting man, I bet you it comes back, whether it's this year or next year. Watch, there's going to be a lawsuit come out when some transfer doesn't get to, sees his spot and can't get back into the portal. It'll probably go away. But for now, there's no after spring ball portal. It's gone. So he talked about the role of Kenyatta Watson, who's the new GM. If you don't know Kenyatta Watson, this is a high energy general manager who used a lot of his connections to get a bunch of players here. You look at a guy like Chandler Jordan, the safety / cornerback they got from Georgia State. He knew Harris Green from UNC. He knew him. KJ, and I'm blanking on his last name right now, the defensive tackle from Florida State. These are all guys that were connected at some point to Kenyatta Watson. Evan Dickens, the running back. He has, the thing with Watson is he worked for Florida State, he worked for Georgia Tech, and he worked for Auburn. But he also worked camps. I forget the name of the camp circuit he had, but he had that too. So there is a huge net of players that just know him, and that helped BC get into the door with a lot of these guys. So that I thought was really important too. Bill talked a lot about the just the process of all of this and what he thinks of the players and all that stuff. And he actually talked about Long too, which I thought was interesting, and just said, he wishes him luck and, It's a great opportunity to work with Ben Johnson. So that was the last thoughts on that. Now, in a moment, he did slip in a name, and I'll tell you about this. This is one last minute transfer portal edition, and I like this one a lot. I'll explain why in just a moment. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black of Eagle Insider. Thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College part of your daily routine. And if you are a daily listener, please smash that like button on the podcast. It does help us beat the YouTube algorithm, and I want to be out there to as many Boston College fans as possible. So thank you all who are hitting like right now. Now, he did mention a name that I've been waiting for. So just to give you a little context of how think news cycles through me, right? Like I'm on Eagle Insider. I get a lot of news that you guys don't get right away. And sometimes I have to hold it, right? So I knew that there was an offensive, like all my Eagle Insider VIPs know, I knew there was an offensive lineman that was not announced yet. And I did a little bit of my digging and I was able to figure it out. And it just hadn't been announced yet. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And then Bill just says it. So it came out. And that's the interesting thing with the portal too. Like, with recruiting, they can't say the school can't say anything about recruits until they sign. So they love when I report it because I can do that. They can't. With portal, once they sign, they can do it. So they don't need to like leak it to me or you know my sources and people that I talk to. They like to hold it off so that you know until they get to do it. It's like their fun little thing, right? Well, they had one guy, and it was Owen. I think it's Snively. Maybe Snively, whatever the name is. He looks like a bad dude. I'm just going to say that right now. He's a 6'4", 300-pound offensive lineman. I think he's an interior offensive lineman from Eastern Michigan by way of Colorado State. He's played 2 seasons, both with Colorado State and with Eastern Michigan as a spot player, and then started last year. The last 2 seasons he's played, he did not allow a single sack. He missed a year. Look, I'm guessing because of injury, but you know, he's got a solid grade. He's played a bunch. I think he's a 7th year player. So he's like 23 or 24. So you're getting an older player. Love that. And here's a little stat for you. Because I love this. Because he was recruited by Colorado State. Guess who originally recruited him? Steve Addazio. Steve Addazio, when he got fired by BC, one of the first people that he landed at Colorado State was Owen Snively. Now, we know Bill, I think, I believe he and Steve talk. I imagine they have a connection. You know, Addazio was around BC a couple times last year. This could be where he got a good report. But again, you add in another experienced body to your offensive line. I love this. You brought in Reggie Jackson, Juju from Tennessee State. I'm trying to call him from now on. Juju Jamo. You brought in Chris Phillips. You have Evan Snively, and you know, and then Trayvon Humphreys, excuse me, from NC Central. You have a whole bunch of offensive linemen that have played, that have experience, that are older bodies, and that's what you need. You're going to play a guy like Robert Smith, and maybe Judah Pruitt and Michael Kraunt's are going to Michael Kraunt's definitely going to play, but maybe like a Judah Pruitt might get in there too. But now you have options. You have a offensive line room that has your young guys that you're excited about, guys like Mark Antunes and Marek Jin and those types of players. But you have the experienced guys that can help you if you have an injury. Because remember, last year you had injuries and you had nothing. You had guys that were just trying to get out there and survive. You now have guys that have played 10 games, played 2 seasons. That is huge. Older guys that are not just out of high school. It's a huge difference in the world of college football. We just saw it with Indiana. I'm not saying BC is going to be anything like Indiana, but I am saying there's a value to what they did that you can replicate, which is getting older players on your roster. That is important. And I think BC did a really good job with this. And so this right here, Snively, whatever, however you say his last name, I think it's Snively. I think I heard him in the press conference say it that way. This ends your recruiting class for now. I mean, your transfer portal class. Classes already began. Guys are just coming in, and if they just came in now, they missed a few classes, but they'll be ready to go, and that's it. You lost Owen Snively after classes started. How they fill that, we'll have to wait and see. Now, if it's a portal guy, I don't believe they can start and do spring football. If they could use it for a freshman, they could do that as well. I hope they go for an older player, but whoever it is isn't going to be able to do anything until the summer. That's just the way the schedule works. So I think, I like this addition. I like what they've done with their offensive line class. I said it on yesterday's show, losing Doherty was tough. And obviously losing the players that you had is also tough. Losing Bowery and losing Taylor are a tough loss. I'm very interested to see with the new offensive line coach, with new bodies there, all of them experience, how this all meshes. Okay. Now I'm going to look quickly before I leave at any comments to see if anyone has anything that they want me to say. I ask again, Josh said, when will we get an update on the Soaring to New Heights campaign and that $50 million that was supposed to make this program competitive with its peers? Because it seems to have been spent absolutely nowhere. Josh, I don't know. And Blake James doesn't talk about it. So, I think that's a question for Blake James. I also wanted to say, what about Tyler Hughes? He was the Patriots wide receiver coach in 2024. Could be. And I think that was all we have for comments. So thank you all for coming today. I want to do, I'm not going to do special live shows throughout the year. I mean, during the spring, unless there's news, it's like a newsy show, like with Will Lawing leaving. That was a big deal. So when they hire a new offensive coordinator, I will go live. If they get commits recruiting, I will probably go live too. I do like to mix it up. I like to do live shows too, because I know they're fun. So thank you all for joining me tonight. Again, become part of my Everydayers Club. I hope to see you all there. Hit the subscribe button if you have not done so already. Follow me on Twitter, on all the social media channels like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. And I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.